Hello, Team Anastasis. Happy Thursday. We are today going to watch another Kid President video. This one is not an official Kid President video. In other words, he's not pretending to be the president in this video, but it's still the same. It's Kid President. But this one, he's doing something a little bit different. He's older, you'll notice, and he is visiting with a refugee school that's made up of refugees. And I love this video so much. I can't wait for you to see it. But a lot of what the coach says in the video is exactly the reason why I started Anastasis, because I wanted a place where kids felt loved, where kids felt like they belonged, and where we could really be a family. And not just because I care about you all, which I do, but also because we are commanded so often in the Bible to take care of strangers and foreigners, which seems strange that I'm calling you all strangers and foreigners, but we've all been in a position where we've been strangers before to a group of people. You know, those of you who are new to Anastasis might feel like strangers or foreigners in our school. But God, there's so many references in the Bible. I think there's 92 that refer to either the stranger or the foreigner. The whole book of Ruth is about a widow from the tribe of Moab who chooses to accompany her mother-in-law and live with her after her husband dies. And she's in a completely foreign land. So when you think about today's strangers and foreigners, we can all feel like that sometimes, but refugees are considered that, migrants, immigrants, displaced persons, asylum seekers, visitors. You might have heard some of those terms on the news or maybe even here at school. Last year, Team Tiernan, some of you went and actually tutored refugees, so perhaps you can share some of those stories today. But I just want to talk about a few verses that really point to what our role is when somebody is a stranger or a foreigner. Jesus talks about how we should treat strangers and show disciple-like behavior. In Matthew 25:35, he says, "I was a stranger and you invited me in." He talks a lot about the Bible talks about not oppressing refugees or foreigners. And he says, Exodus 23:9 says, "Do not oppress a foreigner. You yourself knows how it feels to be a foreigner because you were foreigners in Egypt." So the Israelites were actually slaves in Egypt. They were foreigners. They were forced to be slaves, and they knew what it felt like to be foreigners in a strange land. And so they really needed somebody to take care of them. And in Exodus, God is telling them, don't oppress foreigners because you know how it feels. The way this translates well to Anastasis is, we were all new to Anastasis at some point, right? And somebody, I hope, made you feel welcome and made you feel like you belong here. Hopefully you feel like you're family here. When you see somebody new to Anastasis, right, it's now our job. We used to be those strangers. We used to be the foreigner, to invite in and make our community feel like they belong here. So that's a command for all of us. Leviticus 19:34 says, "The foreigners residing among you must be treated as native born." So they might be strangers to us, but we need to treat them as if they've been a part of the Anastasis community all along. The rest of that Leviticus verse says, "Love them as yourself, for you were foreigners in Egypt. I am the Lord your God." So that's a direct command from God. So we are to love one another as brothers and sisters. Hebrews 13:1-2 says, "Keep on loving one another as brothers and sisters. Do not forget to show hospitality to strangers, for by doing that, some have shown hospitalities to angels without even knowing it." So there's another version of that verse in another translation that says you're entertaining angels without even knowing it. And I love that thought. As we take care of each other, we don't know how far that is reaching, or even really who's in our presence all the time. 1 Peter 1:17 says, "Live out your time as here on earth as foreigners with reverent fear." All of us, every single one of us, are strangers here on earth. And the Bible tells us that as believers that we are strangers here because we're not meant to fit in this world exactly as it is, that we're meant to transform this world and build the kingdom here. It's Ephesians 2:19 says, consequently, you are no longer foreigners and strangers, but fellow citizens with God's people and also members of his household. So there's so many Bible verses. I could go on and on. Like I said, I think there are 92 of them that refer to what our role is. And every one of them says that it is our role to love our neighbor as ourselves, to invite in the stranger, the foreigner. You won't actually see the word refugee in the Bible because it wasn't a word that was used in those translations, but that's what it's referring to when you read about the stranger, the foreigner, the sojourner. That's what it's referring to is those people who've been displaced and don't feel like they belong. In God's community, every one of us belongs. And here at Anastasis, I hope you feel like you belong. And if you are a Team Anastasis alum, you've been here for a long time, you more than anyone need to be aware of how people are belonging, and if they aren't belonging, what can we do to really make them feel connected. So after you see this video from Kid President, I would love to hear what you all think about a time when maybe you felt like the stranger, a time when somebody else reached out to you and really made you feel a sense of belonging. What is that common? In the video, they talk about soccer being like this common language. I know with the refugees that we tutor at Crawford Elementary, we did kind of a dance party, and dance is one of those things that is also universal and can make everybody feel like they, have a part of the community. What might those things be at Anastasis that we have that are make people feel like they belong and like they're welcome here? What made you maybe feel like you belong here when we first started Anastasis, or when you first started at Anastasis? And then how do we keep that going? How do we keep it going within our classrooms, within the bigger school when we can't all maybe gather together like we normally do for Metanoia? So I'd love to hear your thoughts on that. We are commanded to invite in the stranger, and that doesn't mean the kind of stranger like stranger danger, but we're all strangers to each other before we get to know each other. And in getting to know each other and making those connections like we do during this week of school, we start to build community where we do all feel like we're loved and belong. So I hope you all have an amazing day, and would love to know how your talks go in your classrooms.